Of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, Rashid. And as we wait for our guest of honor, Scott Ritter, to enter the building, let me inform you of a few things that are going on with the show today. First of all, once again, they're messing with the dashboard, okay? So I have to inform you of that. But also, join us at 7 o'clock tonight also. We're going to have geopolitical analyst in Bali, Carl Zah. He has his own podcast. He has been on multiple talk shows from RT, the channel RT, to Press TV, to a host of others. And he's supposed to be joining us. It'll be 8 o'clock his time. It'll be 7 p.m. today, our time. And it'll be Saturday his time. It'll still be Friday, our time. So we're going to try to do a double header for you today. And now we're just waiting for Scott to join us in the building. So as we wait for Scott to join us, all right. Oh, that might have been him. As we wait for Scott to join us, let's just tackle a little news. I see a little certain things in the news that I want to say something about. And I just got a message. Hold on one second. Let me make sure. I want to make sure everybody chill. Be patient. Let me contact them. All right. I sent him a little quick message. So again, there's a few things I want to tackle in the news. Now, the irresponsibility of the Biden administration, and not just the Biden administration, this goes to the very core and heart of the Western world, the Western government, the way the Western nations are governed. I mean, this is crazy. They are now talking about they're speeding up or trying to speed up a program to arm and train Ukrainian fighter pilots on F-16s. Yeah, they said, well, they only have about 4 that they're training. But listen to the escalation point, okay? Because this is very important. And a lot of times this is overlooked by most people. Vladimir Putin, the president of the Russian Federation, previously stated openly that they are not worried about the here's Scott. He's in the building. I'm waiting for his picture to pop up, everybody. So I gotta forget what I'm saying. I gotta bring in my guy. I gotta bring him in. Let's see if they'll do it right about now. How's it going, Scott?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing good, Scott. Let's get right into it, man, because by now everybody on the planet should know who Scott Ritter is, so we don't have to go into the formalities. Scott, what is going on with YouTube, the censorship, and because I've experienced it myself. They deleted my channel without me knowing anything about it, and my son, the teenagers, they know a lot of things, and he petitioned that, I think it was the FCC or something, and my channel magically appeared back with most of the videos on it. So what is it that you have, I would say, quote unquote, that you have done to tee them off in a way to censor you? Because I think this happened after you talked about I think Gonzalo Lira or whatever. So fill the people on what's going on.
Well, I mean, I don't know the exact cause and effect. They took down 2 YouTube channels. I had one YouTube channel that I ran together with a Russian media outlet called Solovo Live. This was the Scott Ritter Show, a weekly podcast where I would interview prominent Russian personalities, military officers who are on the front line, politicians, academics, people who, in the United States, these are the A-listers. These are the people that go on, Good Morning America and Meet the Press and all that. So, but their voices aren't known to America at all. And so I would interview them and provide an opportunity for a Western audience to see and hear and listen to these prominent people. And if anybody thinks that the interviews were, just softballs, watch a couple. They were good conversations, and anybody who watched them learned a lot from it. That channel was taken down with the excuse that I had engaged in hate speech. There's no hate speech. It was a simple interview with somebody, and if truth and facts are hate, then I guess I'm guilty. But of course, they're not. At the same time that they took down that channel, they took down a totally separate channel. This was the U.S. Tour of Duty channel, where the podcast Ask the Inspector was done. It was a bi-weekly show. We do a 1-hour show on Tuesdays, and we do a 2-hour show on Friday nights. This platform, again, was accused of hate speech. If some people want to make the connection between that and the stance I've taken on Gonzalo Lira, feel free. But I think it's more complicated and more nefarious than that. The Scott Ritter show, even though it actually had a larger audience than Ask the Inspector, and I think we had 86,000 subscribers at the time it was taken down. And its videos, the videos generated, 75 to 100,000 views per episode, which is respectable. It was not monetized. Nobody made a penny off of that show, neither myself nor Soloviev Live. And just so people know, I wasn't compensated for that in any way, shape, or form. This was purely a public service. I felt that it was important that these voices get an opportunity to be heard. Soloviev Live was kind enough to provide a studio and a producer who would arrange for these interviews, and we made it happen. But there was no monetization involved at all with the Scott Ritter show. Ask the Inspector was different. When we set it up, of course, I didn't know anything about monetization. I'm just a dude that gets on and talks. That's it. And suddenly YouTube sends a check and says, here's some money. And you're like, why? Why would you send me money? They said, well, because you've achieved a certain threshold. And I don't know what that threshold is, but you get a number of, you get past a certain number of subscribers, and then apparently your videos, if they are viewed and if they're on for a certain, there's a whole formula out there that I know nothing about. But they sent a check and they said, you're monetized. I said, well, that's pretty cool. Because who doesn't like free money? I don't think there's a person out there that does. And on Ask the Inspector, we actually, where Soloviev Live, they ate the expense. I mean, they provided a studio, they provided a producer, they pay the salaries of the people involved in that. They do that. They write for that. Ask the Inspector. Jeff Norman is my collaborator. He's the one that's put it together. There's infrastructure. There's stuff that needs to be done. We have a producer, Ann Moss, and nobody works for free. We pay her, and so we paid her from other sources of income. But now to have YouTube say, hey, here's some money, we're like, great. we can start paying. And we're producing a documentary film. It's always good to raise money for a documentary film. We can start converting that money into that. It was pretty cool. And then you find out things about if you have something with so many views, I guess they give you even more money. And then they offered advertising, and for advertising, all you have to do is read a 30-minute or 30 minutes. Nobody would tune into that 30-second thing. And so, and you get paid for the advertising. At first, when they were like, I'm like, I don't like the idea of advertising. But as Jeff rightly pointed out, he said, hey, you're providing a whole bunch of stuff for free. And for this 30-second advertising, imagine receiving that money, what we could do to upgrade, what you could do, pay some bills and stuff. Because last time I checked, there's a mortgage that doesn't go away. There's a car payment that doesn't go away. I just had a daughter get married. That's pretty expensive. I have to feed people. There's utility bills. Life goes on. Life costs money. I can earn an income writing, but I can't earn an income writing while I'm doing things like this. And what Jeff said, and he's always been critical of me by saying, you're giving away the product. Meaning, I'm going on this show, I'm going on other shows, and I'm not getting anything from you. He goes, you're giving away the product. And I said, but it's what we have to do. I mean, if there's an audience out there that is desirous of information, and I can be the source of that information, then I have a responsibility as a citizen to make myself available. And he said, okay, but you've been giving it away for free. I said, well, I'm not going to charge anybody. He said, that's not my point. My point is now, because you've told, I told him, I said, man, when I'm doing this, I can't write. Writing's how I make money. And if I can't write, I'm not making money, but I'm doing this. He said, now you can, if we read this advertisement, you can make some money to offset the time that you spend doing all this other stuff. And I went, wow, yeah, I like that too. And so you get lured in, so you see what happens. They monetize you. They send you a little check and they go, you can make more money. Yeah. Ooh, nice. Then they go, here's advertising. You can make even more money. And you're going, wow, this is really cool. And then you get the phone call from the, I guess we'll call it the agency, and not the CIA. They're the ones running YouTube. We'll get to that in a minute. The agency, they're the guys that set up the advertiser. They say, hey, we got an advertiser willing to pay you X amount of money if you read this 30-second slot. Cool. Then they put you in touch with Talent Scout. And this guy's slick. I've seen it in Hollywood. Man, you've got $1 million product. Your podcast, I watched it. It's awesome. We just need to tweak it a little bit here, tweak it a little bit there. Whistles, do this, that, and the other thing. You can make $1 million. Now, Rashid, I don't know about you. I've never made $1 million. Never even come close. And the idea of making $1 million is pretty damn cool. And you're sitting there going, wow, what could I do with $1 million? I could help a lot of people. I could help myself. I could help my dog. I could help my cats. I mean, nice. What do I have to do for $1 million? Don't worry about it. We'll just tweak. And then they get this whole thing promised up here. Money you don't have, but they tell you you're going to have. But then they come in with the hook. Or they got you hooked. Now they come in with this. All right, in order to do $1 million, we got to change some things. So like what? Well, we got to change this, that, the other thing. I'm like, structural changes. God, okay. I'm like, I'm resistant. I'm going, hey, we got an audience right now that's like pretty cool. And we get along with them pretty good. And we're happy with the product. Nobody's claiming. There's some people always telling me, get a better mic. Get a better mic. I could get a better mic if I got the money from YouTube, stuff like that. But we got a good relation. They're like, now we got to package things differently. And I'm like, okay. It's not, as long as I don't have to change the content. You're just telling me I have to package it. I can live with that. I can do that for $1 million. I can do a lot, But then they came in, and you remember that old comedy clip that George Carlin used to do, the 7 words you can't say on TV.
Oh yeah, yeah. HBO.
Yeah.
On HBO.
Yeah. We're not allowed to say them because we'll get kicked off. But there's 7 words you can't say on TV. Well, suddenly they came and they said, there's 10 things you can't talk about on YouTube if you want that $1 million. And they listed the 10 things out. Now, most of them I don't talk about anyways. It's not my thing. I'm not saying that they're not important. I'm just saying that that's not my area of expertise. But I wouldn't be allowed to talk about the conflict in Ukraine. I wouldn't be allowed to talk about Russia. And I went, that ain't going to happen, guys. Now you're not just trying to package me up. Look, I understand dressing me up better, putting a bow tie on, maybe growing my hair longer, changing my glasses, whatever it takes. Okay, to make $1 million, I'll do that. If you're going to tell me I have to change what I'm talking about, that isn't going to happen. And that was that was happening at the same time that this in the lead up to the cancellation. And basically the day we said no to content modification, meaning we're not going to change what we talk about. Literally the next day they canceled us. And so I find that to be the correlation, the connectivity there. I did a 2-part documentary on Agent Zelensky, on President Volodymyr Zelensky. The first part, I mean, it got significant views, over like 290,000 views or something like that. Again, I don't know much, but that's a big number for me. Maybe some people are used to 1 million views and all that, and they're like, Scott, that's not that much. Well, for me, it's a lot. 290,000, I like it. The second one was on the way when they age restricted it. That's a technique YouTube uses to restrict. So it's age restriction, which automatically denies you a lot of viewership because people just aren't. YouTube's about convenience. It's click, watch, and if you have to actually log in, age and all that, the views go down, which is a monetization thing. I mean, because if you get 200,000 views, that can turn into a check for $1,000 or $2,000. They did that, and then they just deplatformed it. They took it off altogether. They just removed it, and then they demonetized our channel. And again, the idea of the demonetization took place at the same time the agents tell us how we can make money. So what they did is they lure you in with the promise of money. It's like a drug. You're like, I don't know, any drug you use. Shoot it up. Oh, I'm feeling really good. I got a drug. Scott, come in closer. Yeah, here's another drug. Oh man, I'm feeling really good. More drugs. Scott, you can't have the drugs unless you change the content. Well, I don't want the drugs that bad. I don't want your money that bad. So they built up the potential of money, and then they took it away, so that you're going through the withdrawal. And then they tell you how you can make it again and more. So you're like, oh, really? Really? I can get that money back that you took away from me? I'm jittery. And they say, but you got to change what you're saying. And you say, in my case, I said, stick it where the sun don't shine, and cancel. And they canceled U.S. Tour Duty at the same time they canceled the Scott Ritter show, which had nothing to do with this, but because they're both filming, they canceled me altogether. And people are like, why don't you appeal? I don't want to play with these people anymore. YouTube is as anti-American as you get. Well, actually, that's wrong. They're not anti-American. YouTube is the most accurate expression of America today that one can imagine. The allure of money, the narcotic of money, the get rich but make compromises. That's what America's all about. That's what our foreign policy is. We go to nations and say, here's aid. To get this aid, here, we'll give you a little bit. We'll send in the Peace Corps. So you have those volunteers out there doing things, and you're like, that's pretty cool. And then we'll pump some USAID money into them. Ooh, and then now you're getting sort of addicted to this stuff. You say, how can I get more? How can I get more? Well, we got a whole bunch over here, but you got to do this, and this. There's conditions attached to it. That's how we run our foreign policy. That's how we run domestic policy. Ask any city, ask any state, how many strings are attached to federal money. A lot of strings. It's about behavioral control. And YouTube is that. That's the American model. And it's not the America I stand for, especially when behavior control means content control. It means that they are going to restrict what you can say. The First Amendment is about free speech. And if YouTube doesn't defend free speech, then YouTube is an un-American platform. And that's what it is today. It's about content control. I don't want to play it, so we moved over to Rumble. We'll see if that relationship works or not. But the bottom line is I will not allow anybody to tell me what I can or can't say.
Mm-hmm. Well, why do you think they're so touchy about you speaking on these issues such as Russia and giving a different perspective? Both of us know why, but some people don't understand why they're so touchy. And with you specifically, and especially you speaking on the issues of the Ukraine war, its causes and everything. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, here I might end up sounding like an egomaniac, and that's the last thing I am. I think you know me fairly well by now, so I'm a pretty down-to-earth kind of guy. But let's put it this way. I the Russians have tried to get me to speak before the United Nations Security Council on this issue, and I get vetoed by the United States and Great Britain every single time. But they allow other people to come in and talk about it. Why? It's not about the message, it's about the messenger. You see, when I sit down in front of the Security Council, I have a resume that actually means something. When I talk about military topics, I have background that lends itself to that. When I talk about intelligence, national security, it lends itself. When I talk about the United Nations, I worked there for 7 years, it lends itself. They don't want me speaking because when I speak, the words are backed up by the person. The person has a tremendous amount of credibility, and they don't want to deal with that. They'll let other people come on, and then they attack them. They say, you're just this, you're just that, but you're not serious. It's the same thing on YouTube. We have there's a guy out there, I won't use his name, but former Marine. He repaired electro-optic equipment for the Marine Corps. Important job. We need our electro-optical equipment to work. It's very important. And I mean that in all seriousness. But now he's out there doing geopolitical analysis. And saying, I'm a Marine, therefore I am a geopolitical analyst. No, you are an electro-optical repairman. That's it. They're not silencing him because nobody takes him seriously. Because there's no original content there. Because he is simply taking what other people have said and repackaging it and putting it out there. Therefore, he is no threat. Because at the end of the day, when people bring him up, he's an electro-optical repairman. That's it. There'll never be more than that. I come in, I'm an intelligence officer who has dealt with arms control at the international level, national level, who's dealt with major military programs with conflict. I've briefed presidents, I've briefed general secretaries, I've briefed national leaders. And so now when I come in and say, and I also, to be honest, come up with original content. That's what analysts do. Electro-optical repairmen aren't analysts. They repeat what other people say. I'm not criticizing the guy. It's an important thing. But I come up with original content, original analysis. To give you an example, back when this conflict started, I, like many others, said it was going to be over quickly. I looked at it and I went, Russia's going to roll through these guys like a hot knife through butter. War is going to be over. Who knew that wasn't what Russia wanted to do? I looked at it from a military perspective and said, Russia has the capacity to defeat these guys and end this war. Russia wasn't trying to do that. Russia was trying to get a negotiated settlement. So they did a completely different conflict, and it made people like me look stupid because we're out there going, they're going to be in there in 7 days, and then they weren't. But you know what professional analysts do? See, what happens, electro-optical repairmen sit there and they continue to hammer the point because they don't know how to think. They're simply repeating what other people say. Analysts take a step back and go, why didn't this happen? What happened here? Let's look at the data. And then you examine the data and you reevaluate the data and you say, okay, I'm adjusting my analysis, and you come out. And then you get closer to the reality. But, you're still going to make some errors. You adjust again. By May of April, May of the conflict, it was May actually, when the United States said we're going to provide $45 billion worth of military assistance to Ukraine, I said, this is a game changer. I didn't say that Ukraine's going to win or that Russia's going to lose. I said, this changes the game because Russia in March had reprogrammed itself away from getting the negotiated end because Ukraine backed out of it. Boris Johnson flew in. The 1 April peace treaty that was supposed to end the war went away. So Russia recalibrated to a grinding war of attrition to liberate the Donbass. That was the goal. And they were succeeding. And I was saying, Russia's winning. They're going to achieve their objective and all that. But then $45 billion worth of equipment, training for 60,000 troops. I said, this is a game changer. And then I said, Russia doesn't have sufficient forces dedicated to the task to account for this, that this is going to cause a problem for Russia, that the war that they were going to win is no longer winnable in this fashion. And everybody, Ritter's flip-flopping. said, no, I'm just a good analyst. I'm an analyst, a professional who knows how to receive new data. Like, ready, guys, let me educate you. In April, there wasn't $45 billion. There was $45 billion. That means you need to reevaluate the situation to say, how does $45 billion change things? But the amateurs, the electrical optical repairmen, they basically say, no, we're sticking to this. This is what we've done because that's what everybody else is saying. And my job is simply to repeat what other people say. No, your job, if you're an analyst, is to be original, think for yourself. And I did that. And I was attacked across the board. And I said, no, this is a game changer. Well, guess what happened in September when that $45 billion manifested on the battlefield? The Ukrainians kicked the Russians out of Kharkov, recaptured the right bank of Kherson. Game changing. Didn't mean Russia lost. It was a game changer. And then Russia did something different. They partially mobilized 300,000 troops, together with an additional 180 to 220,000 volunteers. What did I say at that time? That's a game changer. When those troops come onto the battlefield, it's going to push things back into Russia's favor. Ritter's flip-flopping. No, guys, it's called analysis, a trained analyst. And so, this is the danger that I pose, because I bring experience and a very professional approach to assessing the situation to the table that nobody wants to deal with. They're not going to let me before the Security Council because I will crush the British and American representatives. They know that. In a stand-up debate, I crush them. I'll crush anybody that they put on TV right now. Put me up against General Petraeus. Put me up against Ben Hodges. Put me up against Spider Marks. Any one of them. I'll destroy them in a straight-up debate because they're talking heads. They're no longer professional analysts. They get paid to repeat what's being fed to them by producers. I'm original thinking. I base it in a foundation of experience and expertise. And that's why they have to silence me. And that's why YouTube shut me down, because things were happening on Ask the Inspector that they didn't want to happen. Voices were starting to listen, or people were starting to listen to my voice and say, this is an expert opinion that's better than what we're getting on mainstream. The Scott Ritter show was getting Russian voices injected at a time when you can't be dismissive. When a Russian voice is saying something and it's happening on the ground and you have questions, but the Western voices aren't answering them, turn to the Russian voice for the answer. That can't be allowed to happen. So YouTube shut it down.
What about the Gonzalo Lira take on things? I caught the butt end of your video about that. I'm trying to figure out what was going on and what was your thoughts on the capture of Gonzalo Lira and stuff like that. Because I'm not too familiar with him, but I caught the butt end of what you were saying. What's going on with him?
Well, I mean, the honest answer is I don't know. I mean, why was Gonzalo Lira in Ukraine to begin with? Why was he in Kharkov? This is a man who, made a career out of, he was a film producer living in Los Angeles. Then he became a lifestyle coach. I don't know exactly what that is, but I do know that there's a lot of women out there that hate him for what he's said, what he's represented. That's between them and him. I respect everybody's position. None of my business. I don't care. Gonzalo Lira didn't register on my radar screen at all until he got evicted from Kiev at the beginning of the conflict. He moved to Kharkov. At least some people say that. There's others that say he was in Kharkov the whole time. I don't know. Why did he go to Ukraine? Apparently, the lifestyle coach fell in love with a Ukrainian girl on a dating site and went to Ukraine and married her. And they had 2 kids. God bless him. God bless their children. I'm not denigrating that at all. That's great. Family, perfect. I don't care. It's not on my radar screen. Not part of my life. He starts posting videos. He walks around Kharkov and he posts videos during, after the conflict or even before the conflict that are contradictory to the official Ukrainian narrative. And he puts those videos out there and people start watching those videos. And then people start, calling him up and talking to him. And he becomes sort of an overnight internet sensation. Suddenly, Gonzalo Lira is the voice on the ground, behind the scenes in Ukraine, posting these things, talking about things. He's not a geopolitical analyst. We'll just say that right off the bat. He's a lifestyle coach. That's it. His skill set is not there, but he's seeing things. And so he starts opining about things, to be honest, things he doesn't know. But what he becomes good at is leading a conversation. People come to him, and then he starts bringing guests on. He starts talking to the guests, interviewing the guests. And that's how I got to know him. I was asked to be part of a YouTube exchange with him, hosted by the Duran. You may have heard of them. And they brought me on the first time. We couldn't get the connectivity because he was in Kharkov, so we did what's called a Twitter Spaces. So I guess we went on there. There's very successful Spaces. I don't know how many people watched, but there were a lot. Gonzalo Lira was very happy. He then, through the Duran, asked me to come back on in April, I think April 11th, around that time frame. I went on his show, and we did another interview. And at the time, I kept asking him, because I was put on a death list called the Mirotvorets death list. It's put out by the SBU, the Ukrainian intelligence service, and it kills people for speaking out against the Ukrainian government. Gonzalo Lira was on that death list. And yet he's broadcasting on YouTube using IP address that can be located that quick by the SBU that has him on a death list. But he's broadcasting. And I'm like, dude, this is dangerous. Why are you doing this? I got it all under control. It's all taken care of. And I'm like, it ain't. What you're doing right now, I could find you. Okay. Why are you doing this? You need to be careful. On his Twitter page, he posted, he listed names. I forget how many names he listed. It's still there if you go to his Twitter page. And he said, if I ever disappear for more than 12 hours, add my name to this list. And that list contained people who had been arrested by the SBU, murdered by the SBU, tortured by the SBU, disappeared by the SBU. That's what he's straight up. If I ever disappear for more than 12 hours, add my name to this list. I'm like, well, this guy's got a death wish. The next day, he disappears. Gone. I get a phone call from George Galloway, a British politician who runs a very successful podcast known the mother of all talk shows, Moats. And he says, Gonzalo's supposed to come on and be interviewed. Do you know anything where he is? I said, I have no idea where he is. None. Next day, he's still gone. Next day, he's still gone. And nobody's talking. I mean, no media is talking about this. Here's this guy he was a big personality. I mean, online, he had, tens of thousands of followers. People, his name was known. And he's missing, gone. Nobody's hearing anything. So I started tweeting, hey, Gonzalo said if his name's on this list and he's gone, assume the worst. And then there was another account that came from a Ukrainian Nazi, a guy nicknamed the Boatswain, who was bragging that Kraken, a Nazi unit, had arrested Gonzalo. And there was a Kraken guy making an insinuation that Gonzalo had been killed, that he'd been liquidated. So, I said, if this is true and they've killed Gonzalo Lira, then we need to, there needs to be a shout. There needs to be a hue, an outcry, blah, blah, blah. And then I wrote an article that said the same thing. But the important thing I said, if the reports of his death are true, I wasn't taking the lead and saying, I believe Gonzalo's dead. What I was saying is the Kraken unit is broadcasting that they arrested this guy and they say they killed him. Gonzalo said if he's gone for more than 12 hours, I should put his name on that list. Why? Because the SBU, the Kraken, arrest and kill people. So I said, if this is true, why aren't we screaming about this? Why aren't we talking about this? And I wrote this article. Literally 2 days later, Gonzalo reappears. Healthy. He won't really explain what happened. He says he was arrested by the SBU. Just think about it. The SBU has a hit list where they kill people for broadcasting bad things about Ukraine. Gonzalo Lira was broadcasting bad things about Ukraine. He was arrested by the SBU, and he was freed, intact. Now, for me, in my former intelligence background, it's like red flag, I need to know more about this. What's going on here? Why isn't he dead? I'm glad he's not dead. Thank goodness Gonzalo's alive. I'm very grateful that he's not dead, but why? And then he starts broadcasting the same stuff, but more now. He creates a YouTube channel called The Round Table. He starts bringing in all these guests, and they start talking about Ukraine in the worst possible. And I'm going, what's going on here? The SBU arrested him, released him, and they're letting him do this stuff all over again. And then Gonzalo, out of the blue, attacks me. He comes out and does this huge video about that I said he was dead when he wasn't, and then I'm not serious. And then he attacked me for the flip-flop. Scott Ritter says now that's a game changer. He's changed his mind. I don't trust Scott Ritter. I think Scott Ritter's a CIA agent. So I came back and I said, you can think whatever you want. I know you're an SBU asset. I know you're working for the SBU. Because the SBU doesn't arrest you, release you, and let you do the exact same thing they arrested you for unless they're controlling you. You're an SBU asset. You're working for the SBU. That's the only reason why you were let go. I called it out right at the beginning because that's the conclusion any professional counterintelligence officer would reach. Any, bar none. I guarantee you. There's not a counterintelligence professional in the world who would say, oh, Scott's wrong on this one. You're allowed to assume that Gonzalo was released and continue these crimes unimpeded by the SBU. It is literally murdering people who are doing the same thing. That was the issue. Gonzalo contacted me a couple times and said, "Why are you saying this about me? Why are you smearing my name?" I said, "Because it's true. You're in the U.S. Prove to me or not. Tell me how you can be released from SBU detention, be allowed to continue to do the same thing that got you arrested with no interference. Oh, by the way, monetization. Gonzalo Lira is monetized, making money. How do you do that in Ukraine? So you're in Ukraine, in Kharkov, by the way, which is a frontline city, is crawling with Azov Nazis and the SBU who know where you're at. And you're broadcasting stuff which is saying horrible things about Zelensky, the Ukrainians, promoting pro-Russian views. Nobody's interfering with you. And you're making money. They're not interfering with you. We just talked about monetization, how if you say things that are pro-Russian and all that, they get nervous, they demonetize you. He's not demonetized. Why? Because he's working for the SBU. Now, what are the conditions of working for this? This is all speculation. I don't have proof of this. I'm just telling these are red flags. If this was counterintelligence world, if I were an active duty counterintelligence officer, these would be the red flags I'd be flying. And I'd be taking to my boss, say, treat him as a controlled asset until proven otherwise. Treat him as a controlled asset until proven otherwise. Anybody who goes on his show, they're contaminated. You have to understand that. Then you have to ask yourself, why are they doing this? And the answer is that this is a laboratory. It's a laboratory of behavioral psychology. Everybody that goes on Gonzalo Lira's show through this guided tour that he's the director of is giving insight to the SBU, to the British intelligence and American intelligence about who comprises the alternative media universe. Who are these people? How do they think? And it's not, you could get that just by observing. But for instance, you and I could sit here and have a conversation with somebody watching, right? But now if they have a question, how would Scott respond to this? Well, they have no way of knowing because you're doing your own thing. I'm doing my own thing. But what if you work for them? Your earpiece, they said, ask Scott, what does he think if his dog attacked a cat? Scott, what do you think of a dog attacking a cat? Oh, I think dog attacking a cat is the most horrible thing in the world. Da, 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 da. Now you have the answer. Cause, effect, stimulus. And in behavioral psychology, this all builds up a personality database because in the human intelligence business, this is important stuff to know. And they're now getting it to the totality of the alt media universe. Everybody that went on Gonzalo Lira's roundtable, and he held a number of them, participating in a controlled experiment designed to collect data pertaining to behavioral patterns that are being used now to direct the discussion, guide the discussion, lead it in this direction, lead it in that direction. That's what intelligence services do in the human intelligence world. And Gonzalo Lira was a facilitator of that. Now, some people say, well, he could have done that unwittingly. I still don't know how you were arrested by the SBU, charged with a crime that brings with it the death penalty, released, and you're doing the same thing. No, it's controlled. Anyways, that's what I believed happened. Now, when you're arrested the first time, you don't get released. Even Gonzalo Lira acknowledged he was under house arrest. Now, arrest means just that, arrest. You're not in charge of anything. I bet there's people in your audience who have been arrested by the police. I bet there's people in the audience that have had the police try to roll them. And if not, let's say your audience, like my audience, is pristine, perfect people, never committed a crime in their life, never did. We all know out there's people who do commit crimes. For instance, let's talk about the narcotic world, people who sell drugs. Do the cops want the small-time drug dealer on the street corner, or do they want the cartel boss? They want the cartel. How do you get the cartel? You roll the guy on the street. You roll him. But now, controlling the guy is no good if he's in jail, right? If he's in jail, he can't do you any good. You got to get him out of jail, back on the street, and now he's selling those drugs, but you're controlling the interaction. You're actually helping him, by the way, because you're saying we're going to take out his competition here. He's going to go from not just operating on the corner of Wilson and 3rd, but we're going to bring him over to Wilson 4th, 5th, 6th, take him up to Spaniel Boulevard, and he's going to get a big territory. And now the cartel is going to come to him, and they're going to offer him a big contract. And now, boom, you get that. That happens. But while this is happening, that guy, everything he does is controlled by you, manipulated by you at the top, including his money. He doesn't get to keep that money. That money goes to you, and then you give him the money because you're in control. You're in control of every aspect of his life. And if he screws up, as they always do, you just rearrest him, put him back in jail because it's a parole violation of the terms of your release. Gonzalo Lira was released back in April of 2022. He was rearrested in May of 2023. I don't know why. He was charged with the crime. All that broadcasting he was doing, now criminalized. He's now charged with all that roundtable discussion. We don't know why. We don't know what's going on. What we do know is that basically, he got rearrested. I would guess the big thing might have been not reporting sources of income, thinking that he could be monetized and not report. I'm speculating here. There's other things. Who knows? I know that you don't get released and get to broadcast unless you're controlled by the SBU. I know if the SBU rearrests you, it's because you violated some term of the agreement they had. And then they released him again in July. He tried to make a run for the border, the dumbest run for the border I've ever seen in my life. Again, I'm not a professional criminal. I'm assuming you're not either, Rashid. But we've seen enough movies to know the following. We're out of jail. We are out of jail, baby. And they gave me my passport back, the one that I was supposed to turn in so that I wouldn't run away. They gave it to me. And here's your passport. Oh, that ankle monitoring bracelet. They took it off and they never put it on. And so you're sitting there going, wow, got a court date next week. And they gave me my passport. I got a motorcycle. I got stuff I can put on the motorcycle. I'm going to make a run for it. Okay, I'm with you on that. Cool, dude. But you know what you don't do? You don't tell everybody about it. Especially don't drive up to the border, pause, smoke a cigarette, and then sit there and tweet. Hey, I'm at the border. Shouldn't be here. Violate my terms of probation. I'm going to make a run for it over that border over there. Yeah, that one right there. I'm going to run for it. I shouldn't be doing this because it's a violation. I'm going to do it anyways. And God bless me and everybody else. Talk to you and do this. Hours. I mean, broadcast it. Then he goes to the border crossing point. He doesn't even try to Steve McQueen. You know what I'm talking about, the Great Escape, Steve McQueen. He doesn't go to the border crossing point. Man, boy's going to try and jump the fence. He's going to make the big move. So that's how he do that. He went straight to the border crossing point and said, here's my passport. And they went, you ain't supposed to be here. You're under arrest. And they arrested him and they got him back in the okay. I don't know what's going on there. I mean, none of it makes any sense. This whole thing is insane. It's crazy. What I do know is that when he was originally arrested in April and released and then continued to do the very things that he was arrested for, that was a giant red flag. And I will always treat him as a controlled SBU asset until which time he can prove otherwise. And that pissed a lot of people off, excuse my language. There's a lot of supporters. Gonzalo Lira had a big fan base. He was a lifestyle coach. A lot of people started following him as a lifestyle coach, and that continued on. They became sort of this legend for the world out there who doesn't know anything about Ukraine. And here's a guy in Ukraine talking about it firsthand. He's a charismatic figure. I mean, he's not my cup of tea, but I can see how people can fall for the Gonzalo mystique. The disheveled hair, the cigarette, the casual, this, that, and the other thing. Big following. They all believe in him, and they are mad as hell. At me for saying what I'm saying. I don't care. My job isn't to please anybody. My job is to be accurate in my assessments. I'm telling you right now, any professional worth their salt in the counterintelligence business would be raising a giant red flag the moment he was released from SBU custody, the SBU that has him on a death list for publishing bad things about Ukraine. Released from there, not harmed, by the way, no broken bones. He's just all perfectly healthy. And then let him do the same thing, and then allow it to grow and expand to become this thing. Very suspicious. So suspicious that it causes me to say he was a controlled SBU asset the entire time.
Well, what do you think about his last story at the border about being put in jail and eyeball getting scratched with? I think he said something about, and I'm just bringing these points up because a lot of people were talking about this, scratching his eyeball with toothpicks or whatever. And why I heard something that you said. Why aren't people scrutinizing him with the same level of scrutiny that they scrutinize everybody else with?
The Messiah complex. Gonzalo Lira literally had become a Messiah to many people. He was this brave, larger-than-life character, defying everything, so courageous to continue to be broadcasting in Ukraine after he was arrested by people who kill people for broadcasting. How can you criticize this man? He's brave. He's courageous. No, he's full. But look, that story, I'm not an ophthalmologist, okay? So I'm not going to pretend to be one. I can't. I should use two headphones. I hear what you're saying about the headphones. Guys, I was in the military for a long time, and things would boom in my ear. And if I put a headphone on, I get vertigo. I literally start spinning out of control. I can't do it. I apologize for the sound problems, but I can't do it. I've tried to do it. I purchased the headphones. I've got them all. I got the little earbuds. I got the big thing. I tried, vertigo. It doesn't work. I apologize for that. But I lost my touch where I was. Oh, eyeballs. Yeah. I don't know. Look, let me put it this way. People who've had eye injuries have said that's just total BS. And so I say, look, they had eye injury. No, I've never had someone try and scratch my eyeballs out with a toothpick before. So I have no firsthand experience on this. But people who, no eye injuries, et cetera, saying, no. The other thing is, the punch in the chest, the broken ribs. I have had broken ribs. You can't breathe when you have broken ribs. I hope anybody who's had broken ribs will sit there and go, yeah, you're right, you can't. You've had broken ribs. How hard was it to breathe?
Yeah.
And
it hurt every time you move.
Yeah, don't make me laugh. I mean, that's the one thing I always told people, because I got a good sense of humor, and my friends do that. And so they come up, their whole thing, because they're Marines and they're idiots, their whole thing was to make me laugh. So they go, oh, and that made them laugh even more. They were so happy, laughing and in pain. It made them thrilled. Broken ribs hurt. They are very, very, very painful. And the other thing you don't do is ride on a motorcycle. That's another thing that people were saying is, how does he do this long motorcycle ride with the broken ribs? But the why am I reading the question while I'm talking? I shouldn't do that, but I will. But so there's that aspect of, and the other thing is, look, I haven't been in Ukrainian prison, but I've been in American prison. All right, and I've been in a prison that contains some pretty hard characters. When I first was incarcerated, the prison that I went to was a level 2 prison, which means very low risk offenders. But then they changed it to have what they call a TC community, therapeutic community, which is deal with people that have primarily drug drug dealers, drug users, and alcoholics. In order to do that, you had to have waivers for level 3 offenders who were up there and then level 4 offenders. Boom. And so they waived them to bring them into the TC community. So suddenly a level 2 prison was populated by a whole bunch of level 3 and level 4 gangsters. And I mean, I learned a lot about gang tattoos because you're playing basketball with these guys, and you got a guy, he's a crip killer, crip killer. He's a crip, and you're a crip killer, and you're on basketball, and elbows fly, punch, boom. I mean, it was tough. The Latin Kings, they had a guy come in with a Latin King tattoo. They did the research on him. The Latin King said that's a fake tattoo he got put on so he can think he can survive in prison. They actually took him out and removed the tattoo the old-fashioned way. Tough. Prison's tough. And while I did my best successfully to disassociate from this kind of activity, it was there, and everybody knew what was going on. So the story he was telling me about, the toothpick in the eye to get the money and all that kind of stuff, it just doesn't ring true. That's just not how it works in prison. That's an American prison. Maybe that's how it works in Ukrainian prison. Prison's prison. Human behavior repeats regardless of what language you speak. And none of that story rings true. Now what we found out is there was a court filing in Kharkov done 2 days ago, I guess, or maybe yesterday. He told a story about being extorted out of $70,000, PayPal account, and they extorted him, and then he did the transfer. Again, how do you transfer money from prison? I'm here to learn, Gonzalo. How do you transfer money while you're in prison? But so he claimed that the prisoners beat him up, threatened to gouge out his eyeballs, punched him in the chest, broke his ribs. He transferred $70,000 from his PayPal account, which, by the way, you got to have a computer to do, I would imagine. I'm sure he has a good story about this. But and all that. Then it turns out in this court filing, what he says is that it turned out that didn't happen. The $70,000 didn't go through. He says there's a technical glitch. And now he fears for his life because he told those prisoners that he was going to transfer the money. Now, I will tell you this. There has been money transactions done in prison. To give you an example, a guard, we'll call him Guard A because we don't want to use his name. He is a pathetic loser of a human being, as most prison guards are, and he can't get laid worth anything. No woman will ever be with him. We have prisoner B, who was a pimp in Philadelphia, and he has a stable of girls waiting for him who are amongst the most beautiful sexually active girls in the world. And pimp B, prisoner B, through a meeting with civilian C, says, have girl D come up here at this bar because he knows where the guard hangs out and fall in love with the guard. And I will pay her when I'm out. And the girl does that, and the guard falls in love, and then next thing you know, he's in a hotel room, and there's a camera up there filming him, and now he's compromised, and he needs money, and he makes the payment, it's all done. But the point is, money transactions happen all the time, but they're never done from within the prison. They're always done from without the prison, meaning that there's things happening, money being moved around, and all that kind of stuff. But Gonzalo's story doesn't ring true. And the same thing about the guards. Again, maybe Eastern European prisons are different, but the relationship that he described wasn't. Anyways, doesn't matter. I think Gonzalo Lira is a liar. I think almost every aspect of this story is a lie. And I think one of the biggest lies that's being perpetrated here is he has to create a cover story to explain to people that he wasn't an SBU asset, because that will destroy him. Right now, everything else that's happening adds to the allure of, this is like a James Bond damn novel, man. This is spy versus spy stuff. Eyeball being gouged out, prisoners holding you down, trying to extort money, breaking your ribs, mad motorcycle ride to the border, brave cigarette smoking, don't make care, I'm going to cross the border, Oh, play. It's like he's writing a book. He is writing a book, by the way. We know that. He said he's writing a book. None of this matters. What matters is that he was arrested in April, released by the SBU, and allowed to continue to do things that got him arrested. That makes him suspicious.
Back to the broken ribs. I broke my ribs in a martial arts match, and I didn't like to breathe hard. I didn't like to cough. I didn't like to even hardly move, twitch fast, and it lasted for a while because the side effects of broken ribs can't be explained to people who haven't had the broken ribs. But if you've had broken ribs, it is a story for you. Scott, why the people who may think that this you're just spewing vitriol being at Gonzalo Lira, what do you have to say to them? And why aren't the people critically analyzing this when they can critically analyze everything else?
Well, again, all I say to people is this. I mean, you can think whatever you want of me. You can say I'm doing this for X, Y, and Z. Answer the following question. Why was Gonzalo Lira arrested in April? Why was he released? Why was he allowed to do the exact same thing that got him arrested to begin with? Answer that question. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter. Nothing else matters. And that's the bottom line. If you think what I'm doing is vitriol, that's your impression. Trust me, it's not. I tried to stand up for a guy that I barely knew. I put my neck out there. I wrote an article. I went online. I was one of the leading advocates about what happened to Gonzalo Lira. And was I a little frustrated when Gonzalo Lira came back and attacked me for that? Sure. But all I did is just because Gonzalo Lira in my life, they're not like this. He doesn't matter. And so when Gonzalo Lira basically started coming after me, I just went, hit the off switch. We're done. Finished. But the roundtable is more than Gonzalo Lira. The roundtable program is an SBU controlled program that puts at risk the entire alt media community. It has contaminated the entire alt media community. If you've been on the roundtable, you have been contaminated. Doesn't mean you can't be purified. You can't. All you have to do is be aware of it. That's the most important thing. Be aware of the fact that this occurred. And if you don't agree with me, that's okay. But at least be aware of the fact that there's the potential. You have to at least acknowledge the potential of compromise. If not, then you're just an amateur. And again, we know there's amateurs out there. We have one, an electro-optical repairman who thinks he's a geopolitical analyst. He's an amateur. He continues to believe that Gonzalo Lira, was God's gift to everything, and Scott Ritter is the most evil man on the planet. To the electro-optical repairman, you're welcome to your opinions. I don't care. But, the point is, what I do care about is that this universe that you and I operate in has been compromised. The roundtable created a forum that allowed behavioral, psychological profiles to be constructed. And how many people have gone in and scrubbed their subscriber lists and said, who are the new joins at that period of time? Where do they come from? Nobody's done that. Because why? Because we're all the same. All we do is look at the bottom line. I got 5,000 more subscribers. Yay, me! That's all I care about. And that's all the intelligence community wants. They're going to create bots, send them your way, and then throw a couple of real people in there, and then they'll throw in their people. And their people are the ones that are now in the community. And you just got to be aware of that. This is information war that we're fighting here. The reason why we exist right now is that there is a thirst and a hunger out there amongst a certain audience that doesn't believe, that's lost faith with mainstream media. And so they turn to you, Rashid, they turn to me, they turn to others to get sources of information, to get dialogue, to meet people, to hear things that otherwise they wouldn't get. What I'm trying to tell people is that because of Gonzalo Lira, there's a greater than even chance that this community has been contaminated, and that they're poisoning the well. All I'm saying is you need to be aware of it. need to be aware. And why isn't Gonzalo Lira being held to the same standards? Because, again, this was a scam from the beginning. I don't want to go too far down. I let people draw their own conclusions about Gonzalo Lira in his past. He's a grifter. I'll just say it straight up. He's a grifter. He's a scam artist. There's nothing honest about his lifestyle coaching. If you go in there, there's plenty of experiences, him lying to make money. He became an expert at manipulating a certain class of people, mainly, I won't say it because I guess he get in trouble, but kind of overweight losers that hang out in their mother's basement that don't know how to deal with women. They followed Gonzalo Lira because he tried to convince them that they were empowered and they could treat and put women in the right place. How do I explain that women don't like me? It's not my fault. It's the women's fault. Women are inferior. Women are this. Women are that. Women are this. And that's why women hate them. I mean, there's a lot of ladies out there that I didn't, who reached out to me and they said, we've known about him for a long time. We hate him. I said, why? Misogynist. He hates women. He does. Okay, whatever. Put that aside. My only concern is he was arrested, released, and was allowed to continue to do what he was going to do. Why people aren't, holding him to account, I think, is that a certain percentage of the people that follow him today come from that category of people that followed him before he transitioned into Ukraine. Lifestyle coach, lifestyle trainees, and I've taken down their Messiah. I've attacked their Messiah, and they're furious about it. So be it. I don't care, to be honest.
But Scott, think about if you were in his shoes or if I were in his shoes, don't you think that that situation would be met with more, insight? Like people would be dissecting everything about that. And my thing is, it doesn't matter to me about this because I barely know him. I think I posted a video of him once or twice, but I'm trying to get some questions answered that a lot of people were asking. And why I'm trying to get to the point is why is he getting a pass when nobody else gets a pass for things like this?
There's a couple reasons why. Again, I think one part is that part of the people that should be holding to account are people who have been following him for a period of time and have bought into the Gonzalo Lira mystique. And if you start questioning the Messiah, you start to question everything you believe in. So if you've rebuilt your life around the teachings of Gonzalo Lira, your lifestyle coach, you can't allow him to be diminished in any way. And so they're going to give him the benefit of the doubt plus over because that's reflected on. Now, there's a whole group of people that didn't know him beforehand, but they went to the round table. And they were in the round table. The round table being this discussion group that he would have. And for them to start to question Gonzalo Lira today begs the question, why didn't you question him when he was doing the round table? And they don't want to answer that question because the answers, there's not too many people who want to look in the mirror and say, I was a dupe. Oh, I was a dupe. I mean, that's the most honest thing to say is I was a dupe. Look, if I had gone to the round table after his arrest, today I'd be going out and saying, I was a dupe. I was an idiot. I should have been more questioning. I should have asked more questions. I shouldn't have participated in this. But there's a lot of people out there right now, especially, I mean, again, I like these guys, the two Alexes at the Duran. I think highly of them. But, they helped create Gonzalo Lira. They helped create the round table. They were part of this thing. And so how can they possibly look critically at this? What they've done is say they don't want to look at it at all. What they're saying is all we care about is releasing Gonzalo Lira. We want him released. Okay, I respect that. And I think all of us would like to see as a human being him released. Nobody wants harm to come to Gonzalo Lira. But the fact that you refuse to critically examine any aspect of this story, to, as you said, hold him to the same. Now, what people will say is, well, he's been behind bars. He can't defend himself right now. We shouldn't be holding him to account until he can come out and defend himself. No, I disagree. He's a public figure. We don't give anybody else that benefit of the doubt. if they lock people up all the time, and the newspapers go crazy about what was going on. What went on when this happened? What went on when that happened? Nobody said, "Hey, don't talk about that till that person's out of prison. They can defend themselves." Double standard. Do I think we should, be respectful of certain aspects of the story? I do. I think there's things that we can say, well, we don't know, and we probably, these are questions we'd like to ask. But there's other things that we do know. We do know he claimed to have broken ribs. We do know that he claimed to ride a motorcycle for 1,400 miles with broken ribs. I couldn't walk 14 steps with broken ribs, So it's just fair to raise that point. It doesn't mean maybe Gonzalo Lira, is the guy with the greatest physical health. He isn't. At least he claims to have that hard. He's spoken sort of heavy and fat and soft and all that, but maybe behind, under that marshmallow exterior, there's this core of steel that he can, Zen-like go and make the pain go away while he's riding his motorcycle on the bumpy Ukrainian roads. Even doing that, that would hurt if you had broken rib, right? He's streaming. So anyway, I don't know. I think, again, we come down to what I talked about, behavioral psychology. This entire Gonzalo Lira event should be written up someday as a case study in behavioral psychology, human behavioral psychology. You could teach college course on this alone.
Now, what is it? I know time is limited, but what is it about the Biden administration constant escalation of war with Russia? Hearing Vladimir Putin saying that any transfer of F-16s would be taken as a nuclear threat, and yet now all in the news they're talking about speeding up training and even after speeding up the training, immediately deploying or transferring the F-16s to Ukraine. I mean, is this a death wish or is this insanity?
Well, death wishes are by definition insanity. So it's both. Look, the Biden administration makes no sense because if you recall early on, they were saying, providing tanks was a red line because that could lead to World War III. Mm-hmm. The F-16 fighters that are going to be provided come from Denmark and the Netherlands. The Dutch F-16s are part of the NATO nuclear sharing program. That is, the United States has B-61 thermonuclear bombs, about 100 of them deployed at 5 locations throughout Europe. These bombs are allocated to nuclear-capable aircraft of 5 nations. I think it's, let me get my Turkey, Italy, Belgium, the Netherlands, and the 5th one, Germany. There we go. And so the aircraft that they have, in the case of the Netherlands, the F-16s, are what we call dual-capable aircraft. They can deliver conventional munitions, but they have been configured because, remember, a nuclear bomb has safety devices, PAL devices, that basically prevent an accidental detonation, and the airplane has to be configured for that to deal with that, and also for the launch codes for the input to activate the weapon, all these things, and then because it's a lofted bomb, you have to have a nuclear site, you have to have so the airplane is configured. Now, the Russians, the United States can say, well, we're going to strip all that out of the, and they will. Trust me, not going to put that stuff in an airplane. It can fall in the hands of the Russians, but they will strip it out. But from the Russian perspective, how do they know? How do they know? You got an F-16 here that can deliver a nuclear bomb, and you're going to give that F-16 to the Ukrainians who say they want a nuclear bomb. We have a right to believe that every time that plane takes off, it could be carrying a nuclear bomb. That's what the Russians are saying, that this is an escalation. But we can't be passive about this. We can't say, oh, go ahead and do that. It's no big deal. We'll just shoot it down anyways. Well, they're going to shoot it down anyways. It doesn't matter. But from the Russian perspective, you have to put the marker down because this is a dangerous precedent. You're transferring nuclear-capable aircraft from nations that are part of a nuclear sharing agreement to nations that aren't part of a nuclear sharing agreement. And the Russians have a right to ask the question. Why the Biden administration is doing is purely domestic politics. First of all, there's not, these aircraft are old. The reason why the Ukrainians are getting them isn't that Denmark and the Netherlands suddenly woke up and went really bad about what happened in Ukraine. Here, we have our new F-16s. No, what the Netherlands actually said is, yeah, we'd like to give them to you, but we got another year's worth of on the warranty. And when that warranty expires and it becomes a piece of junk that we can no longer fly, we'll give it to you. That's sort of like you looking at grandpa's, El Torino and going, and I want that car, 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 I want that. Finally, grandpa goes, took it to the shop, and they said, well, the transmission's shot, everything's shot, brakes are shot, suspension's shot, won't pass inspection. And grandpa goes, you can have it now. Gee, grandpa, I can't drive it. I have to fix it. It doesn't work. That's what's happened. We're giving the Ukrainians the equivalent of grandpa's old, Gran Torino that no longer. They're horrible aircraft. They're maintenance nightmares. They're only training a handful of pilots. I think the number is 6. To do what? The F-16 is a multi-role fighter. What that means is that it can do air to air, air to ground, and it can do a specialized kind of air to ground called suppression of enemy air defense. It does all three pretty well if you have the right equipment and you have pilots that can fly it. But the pilots have to be trained. It takes a long time to train these pilots. It's not just getting out of flight school. It means you have to take them and you have to run them through a tactics course, multiple tactics courses. They have to go through realistic training. It takes years to train an F-16 pilot to do any one of these roles. Which one are the Ukrainians going to do? The Russians right now have fighter aircraft in the sky that aren't being threatened at all. One of the roles of these F-16s to become an air superiority fighter, go out and chase the Russian airplane away. It takes a special kind of training. The Ukrainians aren't going to receive that kind of training because they don't have enough time. The Ukrainians are going to be taught to take off, fly level, turn left, turn right, climb, down, landing gear down, land. You're certified. Take it off again. Okay, now push the button. You just fired an air-to-air missile. You're an ace. Land. Okay, now he's going to take off, and the Russians are going to go get this warning, this thing. You've been painted radar. What do I do? Now, if you're trained, school trained, he'd fly into it, and he'd execute a split S maneuver, try and outmaneuver it to get away and run. Chaff flare, chaff flare, chaff flare. Let's go. But he's going to go, what do I do? About the third time he asks himself what he does, bam, he's dead. That's going to happen to every single one of them. Let's say they want him to be air to ground. Again, that's different. You train them with the load. I mean, because, flying an airplane with, and just so people out there understand this, I'm not just speaking out my butt, guys. I was what they call a God, I forgot what I was called, forward air controller. I flew in the backseat of these airplanes. Not a pilot, but I understand what an airplane. So you can take off with a clean airplane. That means you're not carrying anything, and you can sit there and you can. Oh man, it's great to fly. You start strapping stuff on the airplane, and it weighs you down, drag coefficient, and now you're like flying like a slug. Imagine being in a sports car. You're in a sports car and you got nothing in there but you. It's handling, turning great. Now you put the blonde in there and all her baggage in the back because you're going to Vegas. You can't maneuver that car like you were. You're driving a little bit slower because there's a lot of weight in that car. That's it. Now you're flying the F-16 that's going to Vegas. Bombs on and all that stuff. If you're not used to flying that, you're going to stall. Bad things are going to happen. Now you have to deliver that munition to the ground. How are you delivering it? What's your profile? Are you going to be doing a laser guided delivery? That means you have to be trained on the lantern system. I don't think getting the lantern system. Technology for the Ukrainians because we don't really like the Ukrainians. We don't give them weapons that can actually help them to win. We give them stuff that makes us look good, makes them die. Think of the Leopard tank with the M2 Bradley. Looks good, they're dead. That's what's going to happen with F-16. Looks good in the F-16. I mean, he'll get his picture taken. Hi, I'm a Ukrainian ace. Top gun, helmet, scarf, in there, takes off, shot down, dies. How are they going to deliver? Is he going to do dumb bomb delivery? Probably what he's going to do. So that means you got to fly a specific profile. But while you're doing that, the enemy air defense is going to try and shoot you down. Now, what makes our F-16s work is our guys who know how to fly these profiles are coming in while other F-16s are suppressing the enemy air defense. But that's a whole different game. That means you send somebody out there who does, the decoy, you get the radars on, you have another team pop up, fire their anti-radiation missiles in there, have other teams come in, throw cluster bombs down, and you suppress the enemy air defense so you can bomb the target on the ground. Different skill set. Which one are we training the Ukrainians to do? Because we can't train them for what we're training them to do. None of those. They're taking off, they're landing. That's it. They're all going to die.
Well, something that you said about a nuclear sharing agreement, isn't that in contravention to the nuclear non-proliferation treaty? And and on top of that, wouldn't Russia be in full right to bomb NATO bases where the transfer F-16s are taking place?
First thing is, you're 100% correct there, Rashid. They are in violation of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Straight up violation, but we don't care because we're America and we can do whatever it is we want. But notice when the Russians said, well, if that's what you're going to do, we're going to put nuclear weapons in Belarus, and we have a nuclear sharing agreement with the Belarusians. They have airplanes. We can provide them the bombs. They have missiles. We can provide them the warheads. What do we say? That's a violation of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Yeah, it's sort of mirror imaging your violation. So, yeah, you're right. We've been transferring aircraft to the Ukrainians for some time now. They've received additional MiG-29 aircraft from Poland and from other sources, Eastern European sources. There's reason to believe that they received some Su-24s, maybe some Su-25s. And so there's already a rat line that has aircraft fully functional going to Ukraine. Would Russia be in its rights to bomb the airfields? So if I have an F-16 that takes off from NATO airfield A and flies and lands in Ukraine airfield B, would Russia be in its right while other F-16s that they can presume are going to be flying there, they're still at airfield A, would Russia be in its right to attack this airfield? 100%, because that airfield is now a party to the conflict. But it would also trigger Article 5, and Russia would have a bigger headache, which is general war with NATO. So what Russia is doing is letting this slide because they know that when the airplanes land at airfield B in Ukraine, they're all going to die. So the Russians, look, this is a political problem for Russia. It's not a military problem. The Russians will handle these F-16s that quick. It's a very sad day for those Ukrainian pilots. It's also a sad day for the American taxpayer because we're spending the millions of dollars necessary to fund training of these pilots. We're spending the billions of dollars necessary to transfer these aircraft to Ukraine at a time when we have thousands of people in Hawaii who are homeless now because of horrible fires that took out the city of Lahaina. We still have thousands of people in Florida who suffered from last year's hurricane season. We have hurricane season coming up. We know there's going to be big hurricanes. More Americans are going to suffer. And yet we're giving away $24 billion to the Ukrainians right now. It's thrown away money. We know it's not going to accomplish anything except cause more Ukrainians to die.
So before we let you go, Scott, could you fill us in on what's going on the battlefield and in Ukraine? And do you know anything about what's happening in Niger?
Okay, two questions. I'll start with Ukraine. What we're seeing right now is I think the final stages of the Ukrainian counteroffensive. Their counteroffensive has achieved nothing except over 45,000 dead and crippled Ukrainian soldiers. They started with a reconstituted force of 60,000 for this counteroffensive. 45,000 of them are out of action. The last 15,000 have been thrown into battle. The 82nd Air Mobile Brigade. This is an elite reserve force, strategic reserve. It was supposed to be the force that's equipped with the British Challenger tanks, with German Marder infantry fighting vehicles, American Stryker vehicles. This was the unit that was supposed to, once the original Ukrainian forces broke through the Russian first defensive line, the second defensive line. This was the force that was going to come streaming in, grab Mariupol, sever the breach, run the Russians out of town. They haven't reached the first defensive line yet. They're still in the crumple zone, the gray zone, the flexible defensive zone. and the entire Ukrainian counteroffensive force has been spent, wiped out. The strategic reserves have been committed now. They're going to suffer the same fate. They're going to die. And when they die, there's nothing left. There's no more reinforcements left. This is the cavalry that's supposed to ride and save the day. When they die, there's no cavalry to come and save the cavalry. So then what happens is we have 1,000-mile long line of contact where the Russians maintain pressure along the entire contact line. The Ukrainians have to pour in forces to respond to this pressure. And they're running out of forces, which means they have to start robbing Peter to pay Paul. So they're looking at the line. The Russians are pushing here. They take guys out here. They put it here to plug that gap. Now there's a gap here. The Russians push here. They pull these guys out to pull that. Russians push here. They thin them out. The Russians push here. They thin them out more. The Russians push and break through. We push. We put it here. Russians break through. It's like you ever seen that cartoon of the dam with the Swedish guy in the water? I mean, it's like Bugs Bunny, and then next and nose, toes, and the water's just because you can't stop it. That's what's happening right now in the Ukrainian line. It's basically once the strategic reserves get burned out, they've got nothing left. And the Russians, by the way, have 250,000 troops that they haven't committed to the battle yet. And the Russians are just start pushing back, and the Ukrainians are going to spread themselves thin, and eventually we're going to get a leak, and there's not enough fingers in the Ukrainian hand to plug them, and there's going to be a general collapse. It's what I call the strategic military defeat of the Ukrainian army, and I continue to say that this will probably happen by the end of summer, early fall of this year. That's happening as we speak. What the political end game is more complicated. And to be honest, I can speculate on that, but I don't have any way of knowing what Russia's strategic objectives are. Do they wish to take Odessa? I don't think they have the resources to do that right now. They wish to take Kharkov. They could do that. They just want to recapture the territory that they've already incorporated into Russia. They definitely have the ability to do that. So I don't know what their end game is, but I do know that Russia will militarily defeat Ukraine this summer, early fall. And by the way, that means that the F-16s will probably never arrive, because the F-16s aren't going to arrive next year, and there probably won't be a Ukrainian army this time next year. But we'll see. I've been wrong before. I can be wrong again. Niger. I think first we have to step back and understand that France had a major colonial presence in West Africa, in the Sahel region. When the French colonial empire crumbled at the end of the First World War, continuing through the end of the Second World War, France offered many of these nations a pathway to independence that came with heavy strings attached. And the strings were continued French control of their economy, et cetera, beneficial relations. They had to keep their national, currency reserves in French banks in France. So France was in control, et cetera. It was basically colonialism without the word colonialism. France was still the colonial master. It was interesting. If you go, Giorgia Moroni, I think is her name, Italian prime minister, when she first came into power, she made a very fascinating presentation out of the blue that attacked the French for just this. She attacked their colonial policies and the money policies, et cetera, because all the currencies are related to the French bank, and there's no sovereignty. And gradually nations have just had enough. There's terrorism there, Islamic terrorism. Al-Qaeda is there. The Islamic State is there in a major way, Boko Haram. And, France and the United States led the way in fighting this counterterrorism. But now, decades after that, nations started to get tired of this. Mali, where there's a major French military presence, is a neighboring nation to Niger, kicked the French out. Get out of here. We're tired of you. I told the Americans, leave. We're going to bring in Wagner, a Russian mercenary group. We're going to bring them in to bring this thing, because we've been working with you guys for years, and there's no improvement in our security. Our economy sucks. So they kicked out the government that was working with the French. They put in a military junta. They brought in Wagner, and lo and behold, they start winning. They start asserting themselves. Burkina Faso did the same thing. The leader said, we're tired of this government that sends everything to France. but we get nothing. So they kicked them out. They've taken control. Niger did the same thing. Niger, is a major supplier. I think up to 30% of France's uranium needs come from Niger, and France gets it at basement level prices. I mean, it's a really good economic deal for France. And of course, Niger doesn't get anything. So, and what Niger does get goes in the pockets of the rich elite, not to the people, the poverty-stricken nation. The military finally said, "We're not playing this game anymore. We're kicking the French out." And so we have to look at it from that perspective. But this isn't something that happened in isolation. It's part of a series of events that have taken hold in the former French colonies in West Africa. Niger is also part of something called the ECOWAS, Economic Cooperation Organization of West African States.
West Africa.
Yeah. Did I get that right? I think I got that right.
Yep.
My memory's not as I'm okay. 62, but still functioning. But so I think ECOWAS. Well, ECOWAS, yes, it's a group for the West African states, but it's really a vehicle of European and American control of Africa. It's post-colonial colonialism because we dictate what goes on. We manage their economies. The United States is an expert at providing aid to nations that have heavy strings attached. And we use it. We control ECOWAS like a puppeteer controls a puppet. And of course, now when Mali had their coup, we suspended their membership in ECOWAS. And Burkina Faso had its coup, we suspended their membership. Guinea, another West African state, had a coup, we suspended their membership. Niger's had a coup, we suspended their membership. And suddenly you look at the map and you realize that more than 50% of the physical space of ECOWAS ain't members of ECOWAS anymore. And that's a problem for us, for France especially, because their economy is tied to this, and the French economy is going to tank. So ECOWAS has now been told to put pressure on Niger. Well, Mali and Burkina Faso told Niger, if anybody attacks you, they're attacking us. We're all in this together. We're going to help you. Wagner's in Mali. Wagner may be in Burkina Faso, and Wagner has met with Niger, and they might be in Niger now. So now you have the Russians involved. Algeria says that they will support Niger if that's a potential lifeline for military equipment, Russian military equipment, by the way, which is convenient if you have Russian mercenaries, because the Russian mercenaries have Russian military equipment. So you got that set up. We've put the pressure on ECOWAS they formed this military council, and they said, we're going to intervene. But like NATO, ECOWAS's military doesn't really exist. They don't know how to fight. They've never done this before. And they thought by threatening Niger that the Nigerian government would fold. Say, oh, no, please don't invade us. We're scared. Oh, but then the Nigerians are saying, bring it on. We're mobilizing. Bring it on. And the Nigerian military went, we can't do this. And the Benin military went, we can't do it either. And all the other nations went, we don't want to do this. And so now there's been a pause while the Nigerian army says, why don't we start training? Because that's the first step of the fight. We're not here to bully people anymore. We actually are talking about going to war. Let's start training so we know what we're doing. So they're in the training phase. They've funneled that down. The French, plus the other thing is ECOWAS was like, yeah, if we go in, where's our backup? France? You going to be there? And the French went, one second. And they turned to the Americans and said, hey, Hank, you going to be there with us? And the Americans went, we don't know what you're talking about, man. We don't want to talk to you about it. We have our own 1,100 man presence here, but that's between us and Nigerians. And the French are going, well, if the Americans aren't going to back us up, we're not going this alone. So France is leaving, and ECOWAS is going, what? So this is a mess. But if there is a war, and I hope there isn't, but if there is a war, it will be devastating for the region and for the world. Let me explain why. One, it's not going to end quickly. This war will drag out. Two, it'll probably create divisions within all countries involved. Within Nigeria, One only has to go back to the 60s and remember the Bantu revolt. I think I got that right. But basically, there was a major civil war, the Nigerian Civil War, between two ethnic groups. And I think that you could see that explode again because there's still divides there. When you go to Niger, up in the north, you have the Tuaregs, which is sort of an Arab group, ethnically different from the people that are in Niamey, the capital. They could break away and fight. So you could see Niger and Nigeria fighting each other, creating fractures that lead to internal conflict in these countries that spread to Mali, spread to the region. The whole region is comprised of nations that were made up by white people. Not to be offensive and pick on white people, but let's be honest. We sat there on the map and we made fake nations. And these fake nations put people together who otherwise might not have been living together. And now, if there's a war, violence comes out, you could see this turn on. This whole region could blow up. And it will involve major powers because there's a lot of natural resources. We like the oil out of Nigeria. France likes the uranium out of Niger. Everybody likes the gold and the other minerals that come from all those regions. So everybody's going to be involved. Now, on the one hand, you can say, well, that's just another war, Scott, not a big deal. Except this. One of the reasons why the United States and France and Europe have invested in the counterterrorism programs is because the security situation, the deteriorating security situation in West Africa and the Sahel have caused millions of people to flee. And where do they flee? They flee across Africa into North Africa, where they get on boats and they go to Europe. And that's been a major migratory part. Or they make their way to Turkey and try and come in through Turkey. And that's a big problem for the Turks and the Greeks and everybody there. Or they make their way up through Ukraine and they try to come across through Belarus and Poland. That's another issue. But the bottom line is Europe is inundated with African political refugees, economic refugees. Now, the whole idea is to create stability in that region so that people stay home and don't leave. Europe can't take anymore. Europe's up to here with illegal immigrants. I mean, they're doing things that are inhumane. Boats. I'm not saying they're letting it happen, but they're letting it happen. They're letting boats capsize and letting hundreds of people die. Why? Because it's a deterrent. We have to send a signal that we're not here to rescue every black person in the water. So let them die. Let their bodies go up on the beach. Show the pictures so the people in Africa stop coming here. You are not welcome in Europe, they say. Okay, that's European policy. So be it. But guess what, Europe? If you allow this war to happen, millions more are going to come, and you're never going to stop them. Because people do desperate things when their life is at risk. When you have no future back here because there's a war, a horrible war going on, you're headed towards Europe, and Europe can't absorb them anymore. This is going to be this is going to create conflict within Europe, could cause internal conflict in Europe. It's a big deal. It's a really big deal. It's a big deal from a humanitarian standpoint, but again, forgive me for what I'm about to say, but the white world doesn't care. Doesn't. Africans are Africans. We expect them to die. We've taken photographs of them dying. We don't view them as human beings, at least not the level of us and all that stuff. So but when the black people come to Europe and cause the European people, the white people to suffer, we now care. And the European people are going to suffer. This is a big deal. It should be a humanitarian thing that we want to solve early on. But because we tend to give Africa short shrift, I mean, think about it. Look at the poverty that's in Niger today. Look at it. Look at the conditions that these people live under. And it's because of post-colonial economic, policies of France and Europe. But how many Americans lose sleep at night, thinking about, the West African people? Not many. Look, my son-in-law, by the way, my daughter just got married, so, I have a new son-in-law now. He was in the Peace Corps in the Gambia, which is West Africa. He was there. He saw it firsthand. He spent 2 years there. He knows the reality. He views every Gambian as a human being. He views them as people, unequal with himself. But he had to go there and physically live among them in order to get that experience. But most of us don't share that experience. We don't view them as human beings. They're Africans, just like those are Arabs and those are Nepalese. They ain't us. It's inherent racism in America and in Europe that's causing the negligence that's taking place. That's going to manifest itself in a problem. We would intervene decisively to stop a major war like this in Europe. Look what we're doing in Ukraine. Okay, intervene decisively. But in Africa, at a moment when we need not military intervention, but diplomacy, not controlling them like a puppet, but sitting down as equals. Imagine if ECOWAS wasn't simply a vehicle of American, European, post-colonial control of West Africa, but was actually King Arthur's round table. Everybody was a knight of the round table, sat down as equals, and we sat there and we talked out these problems. Imagine that. And imagine if we said, what do you need? Not what your elite corrupt officials need, but what do the people need? How do we prevent the poverty that's driving people across Africa? How do we get employment? How do we improve the ecology? How do we prevent desertification? How do we get things to grow, from an agronomy standpoint? How do we share the resources so that this entire region can live up to its potential? That's what the leader of the junta of Burkina Faso, whose name I can't remember, he was just in Russia, and he was eloquent. And he said, for years, we've been producing all this wealth, and the rich get richer, but the people get nothing. Why? Well, that's a fair question, isn't it? And
yep.
we should be seeking answers to that question. We should be seeking to resolve this problem without resorting to war, but instead, we're having ECOWAS train up a military force that will get slaughtered the moment they cross the border to generate a regional conflict and blow up with global geopolitical consequences. And who's going to pay the price? Tens of millions of Africans are going to pay the price. That's what's going to happen. There's going to be starvation like nobody's ever experienced. There's going to be death through violence. And then there's going to be the whole dislocation of people. And when we speak of refugees, I would just ask people to reflect on this. I'm sure everybody amongst us has a sister or a brother who has a family that has a cute nephew and niece, and we love them to death and want to take care of them. How would you feel if suddenly your nephew and your niece had no home and were forced to walk thousands of miles across an inhospitable terrain with no water, no food, to an unknown destination? Wouldn't it sicken you? Of course it would. Wouldn't you do everything you could to prevent that from happening? Yes. And if it did happen, wouldn't you intervene to say, hey, come live with us, we'll take care of you, we'll make sure that you're okay? Yeah. And why are we allowing it to happen right now? Because that's somebody's nephews and nieces. That's somebody's sons and daughters. Those are kids who are not going to have a normal life. They're not going to have education. They're not going to have health care. They're not going to have stability. And yet we just aren't doing a damn thing about it because it's Africa. Anyways, that's that.
Wow. Well, Scott, thank you again. Powerful, soul-stirring interview as always. Man, I'm telling you, this is on time. I really appreciate you giving us your time. I'll send you the video link in about 5 minutes after the show. So look for it, man. Hey, be blessed. Also, congratulations on the new son-in-law. And all I can say is, man, keep doing what you're doing.
Okay, you too. Stay healthy, and I'm sure we'll see each other again.
All right, Bubba. Peace. Okay. Now, everybody, we'd like to thank Scott for joining us. Listen, please hit the like button. Please subscribe. Also, tonight at 7 o'clock Central Time, we'll be having international personality, podcast host, and geopolitical analyst Carl Czar on our show tonight. We'll be doing a doubleheader today. Okay, he'll be on Bali time, which is 8 a.m. Bali time. We'll be doing it 7 p.m. Central Time, and we'll be going over a host of issues. Your questions, your comments, all of those things are welcomed. Support the channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing. Okay. And I hope that we have given you an equal or greater amount for the time that you have spent with us today. Remember this, in today's world where everything is being turned upside down, if you know better, do better. Don't just do better because someone sees you. Do better because it's in the power within you to do better. Because even when someone does not see you, God sees you. All right? If you love truth, know that I love you, but know that the true and living God will always love you better. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. You know what? Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Everybody, thank you so much. Deuces. We're out of here.